Welcome back to our channel. The world stage is bustling with activity, and countless events demand our attention. Today, we delve into a fascinating aspect of recent American political history. Stay with us as we explore the states that exhibited significant resistance to a former president, and we promise, the conclusions at the end will tie everything together. Do you imagine every corner of America adores Trump? Reconsider that thought. What if entire states display a near-visceral reaction against him? We're discussing locations where his presence is met with strong disapproval, places practically hypersensitive to his persona. Consider territories where his rallies were greeted with jeers, his very name ignited demonstrations, and effigies representing his policies were symbolically destroyed. Why do millions of Americans harbor such intense animosity towards him? Is this profound aversion linked to race, power dynamics, perceived falsehoods, or something even more fundamental? From bastions of liberal thought to unforeseen political arenas, certain states demonstrated a deep-seated opposition. These states didn't merely cast Democratic votes. Their rejection felt deeply personal and resolute. You might be astonished by the length some regions went to simply repudiate him. Prepare yourselves, because we're about to reveal the 10 U.S. states that intensely opposed Trump, and they certainly weren't keeping their feelings hidden. Let's begin this exploration. Please make sure to watch this video until the very end, as we'll be drawing important conclusions from the information presented. Number 10. California. It's famed as the state where aspirations take flight, unless, perhaps, your name is Donald Trump. Envision a locale where nearly every action he took was confronted by resounding boos, widespread protests, and fervent demands for impeachment. This is a state not merely opposing him, but actively working to push him away. California stands as a territory dominated by progressive ideals, and intriguingly, it's also the epicenter of the most vocal opposition to his leadership. From the technological titans of Silicon Valley to the outspoken celebrities of Hollywood, Trump has encountered a notably chilly reception here. The extent of the division between California's core values and his presidency might genuinely surprise you. One might assume the Golden State would exhibit internal division, yet the stance is remarkably clear. They are largely united in their rejection. This state hasn't supported a Republican candidate in a presidential election since 1988. Furthermore, considering Trump's policies regarding immigration, climate change, and healthcare, the chasm between the state's perspective and his administration only widened. This profound disconnect highlights a fundamental clash of ideologies and priorities, making California a significant center of resistance during his tenure. The state's diverse population, encompassing a wide spectrum of backgrounds and viewpoints, found common ground in their disapproval of his approach to governance and his often controversial rhetoric. This unified front translated into significant political action, legal challenges, and sustained public demonstrations, solidifying California's reputation as a stronghold of opposition. The sheer scale of the state, both in terms of population and economic influence, amplified the impact of this resistance on the national stage. Number 9. New York. Imagine originating from the very state where Trump's entire business and political legacy took root, only to witness your own populace consistently turn their backs on you. New York is the crucible where the man constructed his empire, yet paradoxically, they largely cannot tolerate him now. The instant he entered the political arena, it sparked a full-blown confrontation with the city he once identified as home. From the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan to the diverse streets of Brooklyn, Trump's particular brand of rhetoric simply does not resonate favorably here. But here's an unexpected twist. One might logically assume that the state that birthed his career would naturally rally in his support. However, the reality is quite different. New York has remained steadfast in its repudiation of his politics. In fact, it ranks among the most overwhelmingly Democratic states in the entire nation. With every unfolding scandal and provocative tweet during his presidency, his image within New York only seemed to deteriorate further. Compounding this, Trump's attacks on New York's sanctuary city policies served only to deepen the animosity. Consequently, it's hardly surprising that he was met with boos and protests even at events held within his home state. The cultural fabric of New York, known for its melting pot of cultures and generally liberal inclinations, proved fundamentally incompatible with his political platform and style. This rejection wasn't just a matter of party affiliation. It reflected a deeper clash with the values held by a significant majority of New Yorkers, who championed diversity, tolerance, and policies often at odds with his administration's direction. The city's media landscape, largely critical of his presidency, also played a role in shaping public opinion and reinforcing the narrative of opposition. Number 8. Massachusetts. What transpires when a state, celebrated for its progressive principles and intellectual heritage, firmly rejects the very individual ostensibly leading the nation? You are about to discover the answer. Massachusetts has unequivocally signaled that Donald Trump is not welcome within its borders. The intensity with which they have pushed back against his policies might astound you. The state, historically a bastion of Democratic influence, voted overwhelmingly in favor of Joe Biden in the 2020 election, and the voting margins were truly striking. In fact, Massachusetts stands as one of the most liberal states across the country, with the vast majority of its electorate endorsing policies that directly conflict with Trump's agenda. From the outset, Trump's stances on healthcare, climate change, and his consistent undermining of scientific expertise placed him at odds with Massachusetts. But here's the crucial point. It wasn't merely the coastal elites or university academics who opposed him. Ordinary citizens in towns throughout the state felt this disconnect profoundly. Massachusetts voters didn't simply reject Trump's policies, they fundamentally repudiated his divisive rhetoric. From proposed tax cuts benefiting the wealthy to the rollback of environmental safeguards, the residents of the Bay State reacted with fury. And consider this surprising element. Massachusetts was among the very first states to implement its own comprehensive healthcare system, the same model Trump sought to dismantle nationally. The state's commitment to education, research, and forward-thinking policies created an environment where his approach was widely viewed as regressive and harmful. This opposition wasn't passive. It manifested in active political engagement, community organizing, and consistent electoral results reflecting a deep-seated disapproval of his presidency. The intellectual pride of the state, home to numerous world-renowned institutions, fostered a culture of critical thinking that often clashed with Trump's pronouncements and actions. Number 7. Vermont. How does a state that prides itself on fierce independence and deeply ingrained liberal ideals contend with a president whose actions seem to contradict everything they stand for? Vermont has positioned itself at the forefront of the resistance against Donald Trump. You might be taken aback to learn that even though Vermont is geographically small, it carries significant weight when it comes to political conviction. The state, with its population just under 700,000, has maintained a turbulent relationship with Trump's presidency, and the electoral results clearly demonstrate this. Bernie Sanders, the state's most renowned senator, emerged as a prominent face of the opposition to Trump, and his supporters have been consistently vocal in their dissent. However, the resistance extends beyond just Sanders. Vermont has made its disapproval of Trump evident through steadfast voting patterns and widespread public sentiment. In the 2020 election, Vermont overwhelmingly favored the Democratic candidate, delivering approximately 66% of its vote to Joe Biden. Similarly, in 2016, Vermont chose Hillary Clinton by a substantial margin. You might question why a state often perceived as rural and agrarian would reject Trump so emphatically. But here lies the revealing part. Vermont isn't merely a blue state. It's a state built on strong principles. The state's rejection of Trump is fundamentally rooted in its dedication to progressive values, particularly its unwavering commitment to social justice, universal healthcare access, and robust environmental protection. And unsurprisingly, Trump's attacks on these specific issues failed to resonate positively with Vermonters. When considering his positions on climate change, healthcare reform, and even his controversial rhetoric surrounding immigration, the state demonstrated zero tolerance. But here's a slight nuance. Vermont boasts a reputation for independence, and its residents take this identity seriously. It isn't about blindly following a party line. Vermonters desire a president who aligns with their core values, and Trump simply did not fit that mold. His approach often seemed antithetical to the state's cherished ideals of community, fairness, and forward-thinking governance. Number 6. Illinois. What outcome emerges when you blend a massive, diverse populace, a formidable Democratic stronghold, and a wholesale rejection of Trump's policies? The answer is Illinois. You would likely be astonished to discover just how resolutely this state stands against him. From the vibrant, bustling avenues of Chicago to the quieter, more remote corners of the state, Trump's presidency encountered persistent pushback. And interestingly, the state's political landscape hasn't shifted. If anything, the opposition solidified. In the 2020 election, Illinois overwhelmingly backed Joe Biden, giving him a victory margin exceeding 17%, making it abundantly clear that Trump's policies found little traction here. The state's urban centers, with their dynamic mix of blue-collar workers, university students, and professionals, saw widespread opposition to Trump's stance on immigration, his handling of the economy, and his environmental policies. But it wasn't solely the cities rejecting Trump. Even within the more traditionally conservative rural areas, people began to distance themselves as his term progressed. You might be surprised to find out that Illinois, despite its historical leaning towards the Democratic Party, once possessed a more varied political composition. However, Trump's rhetoric and actions seemed to push it further towards the left. Even many Republicans in Illinois started creating distance from his influence. What's even more striking, Illinois is home to some of the nation's most influential labor unions. Unsurprisingly, Trump's antagonistic posture towards labor rights and his efforts to dismantle union protections only served to infuriate Illinois voters further. For them, Trump's unfulfilled promises to revitalize manufacturing industries felt like a betrayal. Chicago, Illinois' largest city, is frequently viewed as the nerve center of anti-Trump sentiment. From protests to political rallies, the city's progressive atmosphere made it a symbol of resistance. Coupled with Trump's policies targeting cities like Chicago on matters ranging from crime to immigration, it was evident Illinois would not tolerate his divisive style of leadership. Number 5. Oregon. Envision a state renowned for its breathtaking natural landscapes, progressive political leanings, and strong commitment to sustainability. Now, picture a president whose policies appear to contradict everything that state holds dear. Welcome to Oregon. You would likely be amazed by how staunchly this state repudiated Trump. Oregon, with its verdant forests, forward-thinking cities, and deeply held environmental values, has been a vocal adversary of his administration since day one. Trump's disregard for climate change science and his policies concerning public lands sparked intense resistance here. His administration's actions were seen not just as policy disagreements, but as direct assaults on Oregon's identity and future. The state's population, a blend of environmentally conscious urbanites and independent-minded rural residents, found common cause in opposing his agenda. You might be surprised to hear that Oregon was at the center of massive protests related to Trump's handling of racial justice issues. When Trump dispatched federal agents to Portland in 2020 to quell demonstrations, it only intensified the opposition, galvanizing residents across the state. The city's inhabitants, along with people throughout Oregon, didn't just disagree with Trump. They actively opposed his presence and influence. But here's the fascinating point. Oregon's resistance wasn't confined to the cities. Even in smaller, more rural areas, the political shift against Trump was palpable. Oregon's communities, though diverse, increasingly united against his policies on trade, environmental regulation, and federal land management. You might assume Oregon, with its liberal reputation, would naturally be a safe haven for Democrats. But the rejection runs deeper than mere political alignment. It represents a cultural rebellion against everything Trump embodies. The state's population is youthful, educated, and highly engaged civically, and they have clearly stated they do not support a president who undermines the very issues they prioritize, such as health care, immigration, and social justice. In fact, in 2020, Oregon voted decisively for Joe Biden, reinforcing its stance against Trump. Number 4. Washington. What occurs when a state situated on the West Coast, known for its thriving tech industry, environmental activism, and progressive policies, decides it has reached its limit. Washington has unequivocally demonstrated that it does not align with Trump's policies or his style of leadership. You would likely be stunned to learn just how profoundly the state pushed back during his presidency. From Seattle to Spokane, this state rejected nearly everything Trump stood for. In the 2020 election, Washington delivered a resounding 58% of its votes to Joe Biden, sending a clear message that Trump's divisive rhetoric and policies were unwelcome. But consider this. It wasn't solely about who they voted for. Washington's major cities are hubs for millions of tech workers, scientists, and environmentalists who found Trump's policies deeply concerning. His administration's rollback of environmental regulations and dismissal of climate change science particularly struck a nerve in a state that prides itself on its green economy and natural beauty. You might be surprised to learn that the impact of this opposition was felt deeply among Washington's residents. The state has long been a leader in renewable energy and environmental protection, and Trump's disregard for these areas was met with outrage. And here's another surprising fact. Washington is home to some of the country's largest corporations, including Amazon and Microsoft. Intriguingly, Trump's rhetoric on immigration and the tech industry itself created significant friction with these corporate giants. When Trump adopted a hard stance on issues like H-1B visas, companies like Amazon didn't just remain passive, they pushed back. This is a state where innovation reigns supreme, and Trump's policies on technology and business didn't align with the values of those driving the state forward. You might also be shocked to discover how much resistance originated from ordinary Washingtonians, too. The state's tradition of political activism runs deep. From climate change to healthcare to immigrant rights, Trump's administration failed to resonate with the core values of this state. With protests in Seattle and the growing divide over Trump's response to civil rights movements, Washington's residents were at the forefront of resisting his leadership. And there you have it. 10 states that simply could not abide Donald Trump. From economic anxieties to rejections rooted in fundamental values, these states made their opposition known emphatically and clearly. You'd likely be taken aback by how each one asserted its principles, irrespective of Trump's influence. We trust you found this exploration enlightening. If you appreciate content like this, please consider supporting our channel. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the like button. It genuinely helps us grow and continue bringing you insightful content. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Your engagement is crucial for the channel's promotion. These states, representing a diverse cross-section of America, demonstrated that political landscapes are complex, and opposition can stem from a multitude of factors, ranging from specific policy disagreements to fundamental clashes in worldview. Their collective rejection highlights the varied tapestry of American political thought and the significant portion of the electorate that found itself at odds with the direction Trump represented. The intensity and breadth of this opposition underscore the deep divisions that characterized his presidency and continue to shape the nation's political discourse. Thank you for joining us today.